I just don't think she fits the new culture." That sentence ended 18 years of my life, erased in 6 seconds by a girl who'd barely been there 6 weeks. Her name was Vanessa, 28, MBA, and daughter of our CEO. Martin Graves. She liked standing desks, green juice, and having power without understanding the weight of it. And clearly, she didn't like me. Not because I did anything wrong, but because I reminded her of something she couldn't control: respect that isn't handed down, but earned the hard way. They thought I'd disappear quietly. What they didn't know was who really kept their biggest client around. The meeting didn't seem important at first. It was just a routine client deck review. Vanessa was presenting her revisions for a pitch I'd helped shape for years. One of the slides misidentified the client's headquarters. An easy mistake. Geneva versus Zurich. I leaned over and gently corrected it. She smiled in response. Polite, controlled. Then, just as she turned back to the screen, I caught it. An eye roll, quick, dismissive, the kind people only do when they think you're beneath them. I paused. Did I imagine it? Was it just stress? Vanessa Graves, the newly appointed brand innovation officer, had been in the building for just over a month, long enough to gain a title, short enough to still need guidance. But guidance, it seemed, was not something she appreciated. I brushed it off, or tried to, back at my desk. I buried myself in onboarding plans and Weller Holdings' performance review. I'd been with Kingswell for 18 years, put out fires, built trust, saved clients others couldn't. I had bigger things to focus on. But at 5:42 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was Lauren, the CEO's executive assistant. "Hey, Rachel, sorry to call late. Martin wants a quick word tomorrow morning. 8 sharp, just you and him." "Any agenda?" "Just said something about internal alignment. Should be nothing serious." "Cool." That eye roll flashed in my mind again. I stared at the invite on my screen. Private office. No subject. No attendees. I'd been through restructures, leadership swaps, market collapses. But this felt different, and somewhere in my gut, I knew tomorrow wouldn't be just another day at the office. Martin didn't waste time with small talk. "Rachel," he began, gesturing to the leather chair across from his desk. "We need to talk about collaboration." The word hit harder than I expected. Collaboration? I had spent nearly 2 decades building bridges inside this company. I'd smoothed egos, managed crises, and kept clients calm during our messiest transitions. If there was one thing no one could accuse me of lacking, it was the ability to work with people. Martin leaned forward, elbows on the desk, voice gentle but calculated. "There's been some concern," he said, around tone, around energy, especially in cross-functional settings. My stomach tightened. "Is this about yesterday's meeting?" He nodded slightly. "Vanessa brought something to my attention. It's not just the meeting." He clicked his mouse, turned his monitor toward me, and there it was, a screenshot, a Slack thread from last week, a casual conversation where someone had asked for feedback on the new onboarding flow. I'd replied, "Some of it feels overcomplicated, like it's innovation for innovation's sake." That was it. No names, no accusations, just an honest, internal comment. But now, highlighted, isolated, and stripped of all context. It looked like a veiled attack, against her. She felt it was dismissive, Martin said. And public. "Public?" I echoed, stunned. "That was in a private Slack channel for senior operations. We've always given internal feedback that way." Martin nodded slowly, like he heard me, but wasn't really listening. "We're changing culture, Rachel," he said. "More positive alignment, more mutual reinforcement. You may not fit the direction we're heading." I sat back, unable to speak. No one had asked me for clarification. No one had reached out to understand the comment, just a screenshot, an assumption, and a verdict. Vanessa hadn't confronted me. She hadn't replied to the message. She'd gone straight to her father and painted me as the problem. And Martin, he'd believed her, or maybe he didn't care. Maybe it was just easier this way. I felt heat rush to my face, not from anger, but disbelief. I had spent years coaching junior staff on communication. Even ran 2 of Vanessa's training sessions when she first joined. Now I was being cast as the barrier to progress. I didn't argue. There was nothing I could say that hadn't already been dismissed. When I stood to leave, Martin offered a half-hearted smile. "We appreciate all you've done. Rachel." But appreciation, I was learning, was just another word for, "You're no longer useful." And the door closed quietly behind me. The email subject line read, "Team Gathering, Celebrating Rachel's 18 years." It was scheduled for 10:30 a.m. In the pantry, I almost didn't go, after the meeting with Martin the day before. I knew something had shifted, but skipping it would only raise eyebrows. So I showed up, on time, smiling, pretending. The pantry had been hastily decorated. A few gold balloons. A congrats banner reused from someone else's promotion last month. And a half-dozen co-workers milling around awkwardly with paper plates and lukewarm coffee. On the center table sat a single tray of cupcakes, store-bought. No card, no note. 18 years, 1 cupcake. A few people offered hugs. A couple whispered, "You've been amazing, Rachel." 1 or 2 stayed just long enough to snap a photo for the company Slack. No one mentioned the word future. I stood there, smiling for pictures I didn't want to be in, answering the same 5 questions. What's your favorite memory here? What's changed the most? What's the secret to staying that long? I answered politely, graciously, because if nothing else, I still had dignity. Or so I thought. Halfway through, just as I started to inch toward the door, Vanessa walked in. She wasn't on the invite. She didn't carry a cupcake or even glance in my direction. But her heels clicked with the rhythm of entitlement, and the room instinctively shifted. Conversations died, people turned. She walked straight to the center, past me, and clinked a spoon against her coffee mug. "Hey, everyone," she said brightly. "Just wanted to say a quick word about Rachel." I froze. Her smile was practiced, gleaming with executive polish. "We really appreciate the foundation you've helped build here. Legacy matters, but so do fresh perspectives." She paused, scanning the room for effect. Then, "Some people have a hard time letting go, but change is how we grow." A few heads nodded. One person chuckled nervously. And just like that, 18 years of service became an awkward footnote to her personal rise. No one stopped her. No one corrected her. No one even looked at me. I felt myself shrink, suddenly hyper-aware of my age, my history, my presence. In that moment, I wasn't a colleague. I was an exhibit, a farewell relic. I mumbled something about needing to prep for a call, dropped the half-eaten cupcake in the trash, and stepped out of the room. The hallway was quieter, but inside, something was screaming, and I wasn't sure if anyone still heard me. I knew something was wrong the moment I opened the project folder. The Weller Holdings file, the one I had personally maintained for 11 years, was suddenly read-only. No ability to edit, comment, or upload updates. My name wasn't even listed as a collaborator anymore. At first, I thought it was a technical glitch. These things happened, so I pinged it. "Hey, I'm locked out of the Weller folder. Can you check the permissions?" A few minutes later, I got a message from someone on the support team. The kind of message you stare at twice to make sure you read it right. "Hi, Rachel, per Vanessa's request. That document is now admin only. You've been removed from edit access." No warning, no explanation. I hadn't even been notified. I didn't reply. I didn't ask for clarification. I just stared at the blinking cursor in Slack and felt something inside me go very, very still. The file wasn't just any file. It contained the upcoming Q3 proposal, the internal performance metrics, and the talking points for next week's client call, one I was supposed to lead. It wasn't just a spreadsheet, it was a message. I checked 2 more shared drives. Sure enough, access had been modified. Slowly, methodically. My fingerprints were being wiped from the work I built, one by one. Doors were closing, quietly, cleanly, without confrontation. This was how it was going to happen. No public reprimand, no HR flag, just administrative erasure. I scrolled back through the access logs, downloaded time-stamped screenshots, and archived every change. Not because I wanted revenge, not even because I planned to fight it, because I wanted a record, a quiet truth. I wasn't losing my grip. They were pushing my hands off the railing, finger by finger, by lunchtime. I couldn't even log into the project timeline for my own accounts. That afternoon, no one looked me in the eye. I sat at my desk, going through the motions, smiling when spoken to, typing emails I knew would be deleted. But under the surface, something hardened. Not anger, not yet. Just a bone-deep awareness that the people I had trusted, the system I'd supported, was quietly taking me apart from the inside out. I didn't say a word, but I started collecting everything, and when I closed my laptop that night, I knew the company might not have fired me yet, but the process had already begun. They weren't preparing to let me go. They were already letting me vanish. The subject line read, "Status update effective immediately." It came from HR at 7:30 a.m. No meeting, no warning, just a clean, cold decision wrapped in corporate language. My access was terminated, my benefits frozen, my title retired. After 18 years. I was gone before the workday even started. I arrived at the office anyway, not out of pride, out of habit. The desk I had sat at for nearly 2 decades looked smaller than usual. My nameplate was still there, my coffee mug, still half full from the day before, but the system had already processed my removal. I couldn't even log in to Slack. No one said anything. Some glanced up and looked away. Others buried their faces in screens. A few whispered in corners, not daring to cross the invisible line between the employed and the erased. I began packing slowly. I didn't have much, just a few framed photos, a stapler that never worked properly, and a plant I'd somehow kept alive through 3 recessions. Then I saw her. Emily. She had been my mentee 3 years ago, fresh out of college, nervous, always scribbling in notebooks and apologizing for breathing too loud in meetings. I had taken her under my wing, taught her how to navigate deadlines, speak with clients, and hold her ground. She didn't say a word, just walked up to my desk as I wrapped my charger and gently placed something beside my box, a folded piece of paper, and next to it, a fountain pen, my old one, the one I'd given her on her 1-year anniversary. She'd once said it made her feel like she belonged. I looked at her, she looked down, then walked away. I unfolded the note, 5 words. Written in ink I recognized. You believed in me when I couldn't. Let me return the favor. Underneath was a string of credentials, temporary access to the internal contact system, just long enough to retrieve my personal list, notes, and client records before everything was wiped. My throat tightened, not from the access, not from the data, but from the gesture. In a world that had chosen to erase me in silence, someone had chosen to remember. I didn't cry. There wasn't time for that. I copied the files, closed the laptop one final time, and slipped the pen into my pocket. Not as a trophy, but as proof that not everything I built had vanished. Somewhere in this building, there was still a trace of what I stood for, and even if no one else acknowledged it, one person did. I didn't sleep the night after I left the office. Not well, anyway. The silence clung to my skin, It followed me home, settling in the corners of my apartment like dust. I kept hearing the soft rustle of Emily's note, the quiet snap of the pen cap, the unspoken finality of it all. By 4:15 a.m., I gave up pretending. I wrapped my sweater around myself, made tea I didn't drink, and opened my laptop at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd reviewed hundreds of decks and calmed dozens of late-night crises for Kingswell. Now, I sat in front of the same machine, no longer with the title, no longer with a name in the system, except I still had one last thread. The temporary access Emily had given me, bare-bones permissions, barely holding together, still worked. I logged in. The interface greeted me like an old friend that no longer recognized my face. I typed in my name, waited. Then the dashboard appeared. 6 active client accounts. Still listed under me. Still mine, at least in label. I scanned the list until I found it. Weller Holdings. My pulse tightened. I hadn't thought about Tom Weller in days. But now it all came back. The first handshake. The cautious optimism in his voice when he said, "You don't sound like the others," I'd replied. "Maybe that's why I'll get it right." He'd given me a shot. Not the firm, not the brand. Me. I'd walked him through a crisis PR disaster, rebuilt his public image, worked through a product failure, a boardroom scandal, and a company-wide pivot. We got through it, together. And when it was done, he sent a handwritten note. "This partnership only works because of you." Now, his name sat behind a client ID number, and mine was dangling in an interface that no longer wanted me there. I hovered over the button. "Remove myself," the system asked. "Are you sure you want to remove yourself as account owner?" It wasn't just a file. It wasn't just protocol. It was history, proof that I had mattered, once. My hand trembled. I hadn't cried when Martin dismissed me. Not when Vanessa humiliated me. Not even when I got the "effective immediately" email from HR. But now, sitting in the silence of my kitchen, I felt it rising. Grief has no announcement, no stage lights, no formal goodbyes. Sometimes, it's just a quiet click. I pressed the button. The screen refreshed. My name vanished. And for the first time in years, I cried. Not because they erased me, but because I had meant something real. And for a moment, in the quiet hum of early morning, I let myself remember what that felt like. The mug slipped from my hand and landed in the sink with a dull clink. Water splashed against my wrists, running down to my elbows. I had been standing at the kitchen sink for 10 minutes, scrubbing the same coffee stain that had already faded. I wasn't thinking. I was drifting. It was the morning after I removed my name from the Weller account. My apartment was still dark, save for the muted amber glow of the under-cabinet lights. The clock on the stove read 6:17 a.m., too early to pretend the day had truly begun. That's when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. No caller ID. I stared at the screen for a second longer than I should have. My instinct was to let it go to voicemail. I was tired, drained, not ready for more apologies or automated HR follow-ups, but something made me answer. "Hello?" There was a pause, then a voice I hadn't heard in months. "Rachel, it's Tom." I blinked. "Tom Weller?" "Yes. Sorry to call out of the blue. I just heard from a mutual contact at Del Mar." He exhaled audibly. "What the hell happened?" I leaned against the counter, grounding myself. The ceramic of the sink was cold beneath my fingertips. "It's a long story," I said quietly. "But in short, I was told I didn't fit the new culture." Another pause. "Vanessa?" he asked. I didn't answer that. Instead, I said, "Let's just say I was no longer the story they wanted to tell." There was a low chuckle, though it wasn't amused. "And they thought we wouldn't notice?" I closed my eyes. Tom continued, "You've been the only reason we stayed. Rachel, through turnover, reorgs, that PR nightmare last spring, you held us steady. I didn't know what to say. Compliments didn't land the same when your badge had been deactivated. I appreciate that, I said finally. Truly, but I'm no longer with Kingswell. That's why I'm calling. He replied. We're out, effective immediately. I blinked again. You're pulling the account? I already pulled it, he said. We sent the termination letter an hour ago. My team doesn't trust them without you. I reached for a towel and dried my hands slowly, the weight of his words settling in. And Rachel, he added, his tone softening. When you're ready, we'd like to talk. No pressure, but if you decide to go independent, or wherever you land next, we want in. The sink, the water, the cold, it all faded. Something in my chest cracked open, just a little. Not pride, not revenge. Something older than that. Recognition. I'll need some time, I said, voice steadier than I expected. You've got it. We're not going anywhere, he said, then paused. Well? Except away from them, when the call ended. I didn't sit down. I didn't cry. I just stood there, hand resting on the edge of the sink, after days of silence. The world had spoken back, not loudly, not in headlines, but in the only voice that mattered. Someone still believed in me. By the time I finished my tea, the news had already started to ripple through the industry. Weller Holdings had officially pulled out of Kingswell. The termination notice went viral in private Slack groups, client-side circles, and quiet back channels. And it wasn't just about losing a client. It was about who they lost them for. 30% of Kingswell's annual revenue vanished in a single morning. It wasn't just a drop. It was a crater. The kind you didn't climb out of without months of recovery and internal blame games. I didn't need to see it to know what was happening inside that building. I could feel it. The frantic 7 a.m. meetings, the executive finger-pointing, HR, trying to track how access had been lost, Vanessa sitting in the conference room, being reassured by Martin that these things happen. They didn't. Not like this. I checked my email. Nothing from Kingswell. No damage control outreach. No apology. No explanation. Silence. And I preferred it that way. I opened a different inbox, my personal one, the one I hadn't used for work in over a decade. It had collected dust for years, filled with digital receipts and occasional travel itineraries. But today, it had new life. 2 emails stood out. The first was from Ethan Monroe, VP of Strategy at Rowan & Beck, a client I'd once helped through a complex acquisition. He had always been courteous but guarded. We hadn't spoken directly in months. Subject: quick check-in. Message: Hey Rachel, just saw the news. Are you consulting now? We've got some shifts happening internally, and honestly, without your oversight, things at Kingswell have felt unsteady. Can we hop on a call? I stared at the message for a moment, then clicked reply later. The second message came 5 minutes later. Celeste Chambers from Laron Media. She didn't even bother with a subject line. Body: Please tell me you're available. I've got approval for outside strategic support. I want you, not them. I sat back. The silence that had once filled my apartment felt different now. No longer suffocating, strategic. A quiet field of options opening like a chessboard. I didn't respond right away, instead. I pulled out a notebook and started writing, not notes, names. I wrote down every person I trusted, every client who ever said, I come to you because you listen. Every manager, assistant, or intern who had once said, I wish more people here worked like you. Then, I opened my calendar. 3 available time slots, no labels, no logos, just me. I replied to Ethan's email with a Zoom link, then Celeste's. No press release, no fanfare, no declarations of revenge, just quiet action in the vacuum Kingswell had created. I was no longer a former employee. I was a new center of gravity, and the difference was This time, I decided who stayed in orbit. The first client meeting was set for Thursday morning. I didn't need to prove anything. I just needed to show up. And this time, I'd be doing it on my own terms. 3 days passed before I made the decision. Not out of emotion. That part had already burned off. I wasn't hurt anymore. I was observant. And what I saw was a company still trying to erase me without ever saying my name. After Weller Holdings walked, the internal chaos at Kingswell intensified. I didn't need insider information to picture it. Departments thrown into emergency meetings, PR scrambling to craft a message, and Martin walking the halls with silent fury. Vanessa, no doubt, was still there, still smiling, still protected. But protection has limits. I didn't want money. I didn't want revenge. I wanted a boundary, a line that said, this far, and no further. So I called a lawyer. Her name was Samantha Cho, sharp, understated, quiet in tone, but lethal in print. She reviewed my termination, the Slack screenshots, the changed permissions, and everything Emily's gesture had helped me recover. Then she asked, "Do you want to sue?" I shook my head. No, I just want them to know I'm not afraid of them, and I want the record corrected. Samantha raised an eyebrow, but didn't argue. Then we'll do this properly. The letter was drafted within 24 hours. It wasn't a lawsuit. It was more elegant than that. The subject line read, "Formal Notice of Factual Correction. Rachel Lynn. Former employee." The body was brief and surgical. It outlined how my personnel record had been altered without clarification, how false implications had been introduced via internal Slack messages taken out of context, and how, despite my quiet departure, Kingswell's actions had exposed them to potential reputational risk. But that wasn't the part that mattered. The final line was mine. I'd asked Samantha to leave it untouched. "I trust you'll treat my silence as a gift." She read it aloud when we reviewed the draft. "Cold," she noted, "but effective." "That's the point," I said. We sent it on a Thursday afternoon, 2:15 p.m., to Martin Graves, CCing HR and Kingswell's legal department. No fanfare, no press release, just a quiet warning wrapped in corporate politeness. I didn't expect a reply, but I got one. Less than 24 hours later. A curt one-paragraph response from someone in legal. "We acknowledge receipt and will update our internal records accordingly. No further action required." That was it. But then something happened that wasn't in writing. An old contact from inside the client services team, Anna, someone I had mentored during her first year, texted me discreetly the next morning. "Anna, just between us, Vanessa's access to CRM was pulled today. Not fired, but restricted. Hard." Me. "Interesting." Anna. "She looked like she'd swallowed glass." I didn't gloat. I didn't celebrate. I just put the phone down and looked out the window. The city moved below me like it always had. No applause, no headlines, no grand reckoning. But I had my moment. Not one built on vengeance, one built on control. Me choosing not to explode, not to react, but to draw the line in ink and walk away with certainty. Vanessa stayed, but without access to client history, relationship data, and internal notes. She was a figurehead with no command center. The shiny title remained. The power beneath it? Quietly revoked, and no one needed to know I had anything to do with it. That was the best part. In a world obsessed with noise, I had done the rarest thing. I made silence feel like thunder. The corner table at the cafe had become my new office. No keycard, no corporate Wi-Fi, no HR department waiting to measure my output in bullet points. Just me. A laptop, and a schedule that finally felt like it belonged to me. I glanced at my calendar. 3 Zoom calls lined up for the week, all with clients I used to serve under someone else's banner. Now. They came to me directly, not because of a title, but because of trust. I wasn't senior director anymore. I wasn't anything but Rachel, and for the first time in years, that was more than enough. I opened an email from Ethan at Rowan and Beck. He wanted a second opinion on an upcoming restructuring pitch. No chain of approval, no middlemen, just a calendar link and a line that said, "We go where you go." Next was Celeste from Luron Media. She had already forwarded my name to 3 other firms. Unprompted. "You saved us when we were about to crash." Her message read, "The least I can do is make sure they know who really kept us afloat." I set both calls, one on Thursday, one the following Tuesday. Quiet, simple. No more status meetings, no more quick syncs. As I reached for my coffee, my hand brushed against something at the bottom of my bag. My old Kingswell business card holder. I hadn't seen it in weeks. Instinctively, I opened it. One card remained. There it was. My name. Their logo. A title I no longer wore. I turned the card over and pulled out the pen I now carried everywhere. Emily's returned gift. On the blank side, I wrote slowly and clearly, "I was never just a name under your logo." Then I folded the card once, walked to the cafe's waste bin, and dropped it inside. It didn't feel like revenge. It didn't even feel like closure. It felt like space, like breathing room, like freedom. I returned to my seat, opened a new notebook, and started jotting down names, not accounts, but people, clients I respected, colleagues who had once whispered thank yous after hard meetings, real relationships, the kind worth keeping, because I wasn't rebuilding a company, I was rebuilding meaning. And this time, no one could take it from me. We don't always get the ending we plan for, but sometimes, the one we fight for quietly is the one that frees us the most. If this story made you pause, even for a moment, leave a comment below. Let me know where you're watching from, or share a moment when you took the crown back on your own terms. And if you haven't yet, hit like, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and subscribe for more stories that remind us all. Power doesn't always speak loudly. Sometimes, it whispers, then walks out the front door.